of animals. And so right now I'm taking a piece of animal tissue and I'm extracting it, which basically means I let it soak in a solvent and I am extracting out those compounds. And then we can analyze the compounds to see what's there.
And when you say human-made, it would be something that maybe is not good for marine animals?
That's correct, yeah. So a lot of the contaminants that I look at are things that humans have designed for a specific purpose, and then after the fact, we found out they actually aren't very healthy for humans or wildlife. But because of how humans have designed those chemicals, they tend to stick in the environment for a really long time. So even though we might not be producing those chemicals anymore, we still find it in the environment and it can still have negative effects.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, I'm glad you're looking at that because then you can find ways to help them. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. So by knowing kind of what animals are exposed to, we can make predictions about how that might affect their health. And then we can inform management decisions on ways of best trying to preserve our species.
Well, that's a good thing. I sent you some questions. I don't know if you saw them or you want me to just ask them while you're here.
I saw them, but you can go ahead and ask, in whichever order you'd like.
Well, we're in fourth grade. We have 4 classrooms in here right now, so it's about 100 fourth graders in here watching.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of you guys.
I invited all the classes in fourth grade because I thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
So we were going to talk about what subjects did you like in fourth grade? Like, what were you like in fourth grade?
So I am a marine biologist right now. I recently finished my doctorate degree earlier this year, actually. And so I've been a student for almost my entire life, which is a very long time to be in school, I know. But since then, I've always wanted to be a marine biologist. So even in the fourth grade, I really enjoyed the ocean and marine creatures. So science was one of my favorite topics in fourth grade, but I also really enjoyed history.
Okay. Did you grow up close to an ocean?
I did. I'm from the Los Angeles area, which is where I am currently in Long Beach, so coastal Southern California. So I grew up near the ocean and went to a bunch of aquariums as kids, and my parents had enrolled us in like after school programs. And so there was a lot of opportunities for hands-on stuff when I was a kid.
Okay, that's awesome. When you said doctorate a minute ago, how many years of college is that?
So you guys are in fourth grade, right? So you guys will go to eighth grade, and then you guys will get to high school, which is another 4 years. And then you may go to college, which is another 4. And then I did a master's program after that, which is called graduate school. So that was another 4 years. And then I did my doctorate, which was another 4 after that. So a lot of school.
A lot of school.
Yeah.
But when you're doing what you love?
Yes, yeah. So I'm extremely interested in science and the pursuit of scientific questions. So it hasn't been without struggle. You have to work really hard. But being able to ask those types of scientific questions has been very rewarding for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I put in there, did you set goals and use perseverance throughout your schooling, even grade school or high school or your doctorate? Talk about goals and like perseverance a little bit.
Oh, most definitely. I think for any career that somebody wants to pursue, so it doesn't have to just be science, but really bringing your passion to that field and making sure that you do set goals so that you can achieve something. So without putting a goal, you don't really have something to work towards. And it's really important to be able to set realistic goals, but also making sure that they are ambitious so that you can get to exactly where you want to get to. So even as a fourth grader, I strived to get the best grades that I could, and that continued all the way through my schooling. And then as a graduate student, was working very hard to be in the lab or the field as much as I could to get my work done so that I could graduate and go on from there.
Were there ever days that were so hard or that you made mistakes that you felt like giving up?
Oh, yes, most definitely. Um, it is definitely a challenge. And so it takes a lot of internal, like you said, perseverance and just stick to itness to be able to go on, because there are a lot of failures in science where you try something and it doesn't work out, or you go out in the field trying to sample an animal and they're not there. And so there's a lot of times where you just kind of have to pick yourself up and continue forward.
So you didn't have somebody telling you, oh, come on, you can do this. Sometimes it just had to be you saying, okay, that was hard. It was a mistake. We're done and move on.
Yeah, and not everybody has a different experience, but a lot of it was internally about needing to dust your shoes off and get back to it. Of course, I did have the support of my friends and family, which I often did have to speak to them about the difficulties I was having just to vent. But a lot of it does come from within, the same way that anybody that plays sports needs to dig deep to be able to compete and train at the level that they do for professional sports. It's the same way, maybe a little less physically, but definitely that mental perseverance is necessary.
Okay, love it. What's your favorite animal to work with or study and why?
So the round stingray is an animal that's near and dear to my heart. So it's about a dinner plate size stingray. So it's sometimes we call them flat sharks. So they're related to those toothy sharks that you might have seen at aquariums. So these are cousins of sharks, and they're compressed. And they swim on the bottom of the ocean. And so I did most of my graduate work on that species. So they're a lot of fun, even though they're not as flashy as some other animals. But I really enjoy working with them.
Do you guys know that stingrays were related to sharks? Did anybody know that?
Yes.
And are they like poisonous? Can they kill you?
Yes.
No, so they can't kill you, but they do have a barb on their tail that does have a venom on it, which can hurt a lot if you get stung, which I've definitely gotten stung on my hands a bunch of times as we're reaching into a net trying to get animals out. And sometimes accidents happen, even though we do our best to try to make sure they don't happen. And so that can be very painful, but it's not lethal.
And how long does a stingray barb, like, how long does that last, the pain from that?
So what we recommend is that if somebody gets stung, and this applies to any stingray that you might encounter in the ocean, is you want to try to put that stung body part, so in my case it was my hand, in a jar of hot water. And that hot water helps to make the toxin less hurtful. And so the heat helps kill that toxin so it goes away. So if you put your hand in about 30 minutes in that hot water, the pain will go away. And then after that, just making sure that no subsequent infection happens at the sting site. Because obviously with a barb, you're puncturing through your skin. And so that's an opportunity for bacteria to get in.
Goodness, the rough things on the job, guys. She got stung by stingray. Yeah. So I put a question: has something amazing or scary ever happened while you're with an animal? So just talk about some of the animals that you've worked with and some of the experiences that you've had.
Sure. So I've worked with mostly sharks and stingrays. And so obviously when you're working with these bigger sharks, there's a bit more concern for safety, just because it's an animal you can't see how tall I am, but I'm about a little over 5 feet. So we work with animals that are about 5 feet to 8 or 10 feet. And so safety is the number one concern. But we work at the lab that I'm in right now with baby great white sharks. And so we haven't had any close calls, which is really good, because again, safety is our number one priority for both humans and the animal. But we have had a lot of cool times where we can tag these sharks and then track their movements over many years, which is pretty exciting to track the life of an animal and see where it's going over a really long course of time.
Yeah, what's the longest you kind of studied one animal when you're tracking them like that?
So we use tags that can last up to 10 years. And we've been working on this project for about 8 or 9 years. So we have some sharks that we have heard from, not consistently, but definitely over a 5-year period, which is pretty cool.
So then you tag them and your computer reads them and then you compile that information to study. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So one thing that we're looking at is to see how sharks are utilizing beaches, because obviously if there are great white sharks at the beach, we want to make sure that both the animal and people can use the ocean in a safe way. So that's one of the aspects of our project that we're looking at, is to see how frequently sharks are visiting beaches. And we're also interested in looking at their migrations from California into Mexico and how often they're crossing the border, so we can get an idea of how connected our populations are in different countries.
Okay, and did you tell us where you're located? Is it where you grew up?
It's in the same general area, so Southern California. Right now, I'm at Long Beach, so California State University Long Beach is specifically where I'm at right now. And our White Shark Project goes throughout the coastal California, but it's mostly focused in Southern California.
Are you south of LA?
Slightly, by about like 20, 25 miles.
Awesome. Yeah, we can see the nice sunshine behind you.
Yeah, we just had some rain yesterday and it was pretty stormy, but it's all clear now. We actually have some snow on the mountains, which is really pretty to look at. Something I'm sure you guys are familiar with.
We're hoping for it. We've had a little. It's cold enough, but are you near any wildfires?
No, not as of right now. So we did have one of the biggest fires a couple weeks ago, and that is about 30 or 40 miles north of here. So enough that the air quality was pretty poor, but nothing to be afraid of in danger, at least where I was.
Yeah. Could you smell smoke in the air and stuff?
Yes. Yeah. It didn't black out the sun, but it was definitely very dark.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Is there anything else you can think of that you want to tell us about that we didn't ask?
I would just say that for whatever you guys are interested in pursuing, keep at it, study really hard, and try to explore as many different things as possible, because I know that there's a lot of people who wanted to do something when they were in 4th grade and then they got to college or high school or whatever it was and completely changed their route and then went full speed ahead on their new interests. So definitely keep open minds, but also study really hard, because that's going to be important for making sure that you're successful in the future.
Okay, and what's your favorite thing about being a marine biologist? I'm sure some people like to be out in the ocean and some people like to do different things. What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing is being able to do research and to see just the different varieties of the way that we can explore biology and how animals interact in their environment and how human action can affect those interactions. So getting to ask some scientific questions, and of course working on cool animals like sharks and stingrays is a lot of fun too.
Oh, do you have time for 4 questions if I let each teacher just pick one person to ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Somebody want to pick? Mason, what's your question?
What is your favorite ocean animal?
Well, she already answered that one. Do you have a different one? Somebody in my class has a different one. In my class? What's your question, Nikita?
What do marine biologists do if they're in the ocean?
Oh, he wants to know if you're one of the marine biologists that go out into the ocean. What are some of the jobs that person would have?
Okay, yeah. So we do go into the ocean quite a bit. So for one of the projects that I work on, the stations that we have to listen for sharks are about a foot long, and so we have to go out and service those equipment so we can read those detections from the animals. So that requires a lot of scuba diving. So I learned to scuba dive when I was when I was quite young. I think I was in 8th grade when I learned to scuba dive. And some people learn when they're adults. But being able to be comfortable in the water is a big thing. So we actually are going out to an offshore island this weekend to put out some equipment. So we'll be doing some diving. So that's some of the jobs. We need people that drive boats. So that's really important for us, is to have people who are familiar with operating marine, I don't want to say technology, but motorboats and those sorts of things. So there's a variety of different types of jobs that can range from all the way in studying things in the laboratory to being completely just out in the field and never even setting foot in the lab. So there is the variety of different things.
Takes a whole village, right?
Whole village, yeah.
What is your question?
Have you ever studied like what an octopus does? What does an octopus in general?
Can you hear him?
Something about an octopus, but could you repeat the question?
He just wants to know if you've ever had anything to do or study or look out with octopus.
Oh, I have not personally, but I actually have several friends that have looked at octopus, and they have been able to travel around the country and go to different aquariums to look at the behavior of different octopus in aquarium, and in particular looking at what's called social behavior. So looking at how different octopi interact with each other. So I haven't done that personally, but I actually have several friends who have studied octopus and social behaviors.
The little guy that asked always has like fact of the day. He knows all these animal facts. He's always impressing me. So
that's awesome. Keep at it.
Alex, what's your question? Really loud.
What is the most used? What is your most used thing?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, he's asking like, what's the most used instrument or tool that you have to work with every day?
Oh, that's really good. My computer, probably. So as a marine biologist, we actually spend a pretty significant portion of our time on the computer. And part of that is either analyzing data or writing grants so that we can get money to do the things we need to do, or writing emails so that we can collaborate with other people. So that's probably the most important tool that we actually use, and it doesn't sound very significant, but we do spend a lot of time actually in front of screens. And after that, it really depends on what the person's doing. So a lot of the work I do does occur in the lab, which is where I am right now. And there's all kinds of technology that I work with to be able to analyze those contaminants in animal tissue. So it does vary from person to person, but the computer would be the #1 tool that we use quite a lot.
Yeah, and we talked about how scientists share information, and you build and look at mistakes and everything between scientists, and they don't like hide it and keep it for themselves. They write papers and articles, and then, is that correct?
No, that's absolutely. So one of the really important parts about science is to be able to communicate your science. And so writing and having good English that you can communicate your ideas so that other people who don't know what you do can understand. So that's a very important skill that a lot of people, I don't think, realize, is that there is a lot of writing that we actually do as scientists. And so that is a very important part of your academic training, is learning how to be able to write effectively. And then your other point, that's exactly right in terms of our collaborations and talking with other scientists and generating new ideas, because it doesn't really help anybody if they just keep everything to themselves. And that's part of moving the field forward, is to be able to work with people in different areas so that we can find out new things.
We're really happy there's really smart people like you in the world. And one of our other teachers, her daughter has her doctorate in, it's not just rock geology, planetary geology. Planetary geology.
Wow, fantastic.
There we go. If you want to study Mars, we can put you in touch.
She'll get her PhD in May.
She's getting her PhD in May.
Congratulations. I know that final push is a lot, but the end is in sight.
Yeah. Okay, one last question. Santiago?
Did you ever study bull sharks?
Did you ever study bull sharks?
Let's see. I have not directly studied bull sharks. In our waters where we are in California, we actually don't have that species. But I have other friends of mine that are in Texas that study bull sharks, and they are looking at what's called nursery habitat. So these sharks, when they're babies, their mom will give birth to them near the coast. And then they'll spend time in these nearshore waters where they're protected from bigger sharks that might want to try to eat them. And so they use these nursery grounds to grow up and get big enough where they can venture out into more open ocean waters. And so my friend is looking at how those baby sharks move between those different nursery areas, and if moms come back and give birth in the same place where they were a baby. So looking to see if moms come back to the same nursery that they grew up in, and seeing if that's where they also give birth to their pups.
Well, that is so amazing. Let's give her a little round of applause, guys. We appreciate your time and talking with us. And does anybody feel inspired that they might be a biologist when they grow up? Raise your hand if you're thinking about it. There's some science people. We have some. So,
yay!
Joy, thank you for all of your work and for taking your time to video with us today.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Give her away, guys.
Happy Friday, guys.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.